March 8th. Still at turn of the year, not quite to the point where the current year's title Call of Duty World War II released even its second DLC content pack. Still about a month before that. The clock hits 9 AM Pacific Standard Time and no one really knew what was about to happen. Earlier in the week, there were leaks from an internal databasing system showcasing the title of Black Ops 4 from GameStop, and one day after that, James Harden of the Houston Rockets debuted what many believed was the logo for the upcoming title. But no one at that time, on the morning of March the 8th, expected a full confirmation and reveal to take place as early as it did. It was the earliest reveal in Call of Duty history, and thus began the marketing giant that became Black Ops 4. Time rolled on, rumor after rumor detailing things that we'd later see come to pass, like the shift from Steam to Blizzard.net for PC users, a near future setting, a battle royale game mode, no campaign associated with the title, and so on and so forth, as well as things that had never been confirmed, such as a less than ideal development process and an internal game resembling the likes of Overwatch. However, the writing was on the wall. The time between the teaser to the official reveal was going to be the longest 2 months of fans' lives. Rumors, reports, and rampant speculation helped tide over that time for those seeking answers until that day finally came. May 17th, reveal day in Los Angeles, California. Vloggers, creators, press, and fans of all kinds found their way to the Jet Center of Los Angeles in Hawthorne, California. Here, all in attendance waited anxiously for the 45 minutes to pass between doors opening at 9:15 AM until the keynote began at 10 AM Pacific Standard Time. When the room went dark, the show began with the official reveal trailer for MP in Black Ops 4, and what would ultimately kick off plenty of mixed feelings, but ultimately stemming the entirety of the game that we know of today. Interestingly enough, it wasn't the only main mode of Black Ops 4 that was showed off. Treyarch didn't just come prepared to showcase and reveal a reimagination of their specialist system and their full return to boots on the ground. No, they also came prepared to show zombies with the full confirmation of not one, not two, but 3 zombies maps on day 1 of launch, the largest initial offering to fans ever for zombies. And they weren't done there, which was the most surprising part to fans in attendance and those watching at home. Outside of the information that we had to digest for MP as well as zombies, Treyarch went full send and revealed the early workings of Blackout while officially confirming its existence and promise. All 3 modes shown right up front. There's never been an event like this in COD history, and to make things even crazier, while there were studio commentary and information given during the live stream to accurately depict the game itself was actually playable for those in attendance, which brings us full circle to today. 365 days or a full year later. What was available to be played and captured for those that had been given the clearance for capture was pre-alpha footage depicting the multiplayer portion of the game. While zombies and Blackout were teased in small doses, the world would not see those until later in September and alongside a full release of the game in October. But multiplayer was the driving force of this year's marketing, especially given the lack of a narrative-driven campaign that would normally champion the marketing in years past. Instead, MP was front and center for all to see and test out in demo format. And actually, what you're watching in the background is now a part of that pre-alpha footage from 1 year ago today. When watching, I'm sure that you can pick up immediately some noticeable differences from what you were to jump into right now today and what we had back then. One of the biggest differences was that of specialists. While not necessarily all that different in the way of which their mannerisms they had and performed, simply that they were not all on the table. In Black Ops 4 now, as of 3 operation introductions with new operators, there sits 13 specialists in the game. But at the time of the pre-alpha footage, we only had access to 8. Crash, Firebreak, Ruin, Seraph, Torque, Ajax, Recon, and Battery. The systems in place were our first introduction to the change-up as well to that specialist system that included both a lethal and a tactical, not just one or the other, and some not even belonging to their initial counterparts from Black Ops 3, such as Seraph's combat focus being replaced by a tac deploy beacon, and Recon taking over what was previously Vision Pulse, and so on and so forth. Perhaps the best way to describe it, however, is ironically, Nomad and Prophet were not displayed for whatever reason. Perhaps to save some content for later reveals, but also in the same sense, those two actually probably created the biggest community discussion, so maybe it was best to leave them out from the beginning. Other major changes came in the way of simple core fundamentals of the game. Things like your scrolling wheel menu was seen for the first time, which at that time it was simply the Destiny-style menu selection. There was no secondary option as you have right now to use your D-pad to arrow over. It was all controlled via your left thumbstick, which was a feature that again was met with much debate. However, that D-pad functionality was introduced during the beta, so it wasn't too much of a problem for too long, but it did catch some people off guard initially. Outside of that, menu-wise, there were a dozen things visually changed, dozens of description changes, and many more things that were adjusted on the back-end menu side. Such an example were some perks that were switched to different tiers, weapons were naturally withheld so as to not showcase everything up front, and I'm pretty sure that as well as weaponry and much more, there was still on the back end a lot of things on the cutting room floor at this particular time, so showing them off might not have been the best idea. Gameplay-wise, I distinctly remember sitting at the desk space I was at with a few YouTuber friends to my right and left and thinking, man, this is surprisingly natural and surprisingly smooth. If one played Black Ops 3 or even Infinite Warfare, it felt regular to them. Admittedly, I'm sure many had a different time getting reacclimated to the hero-based combat since World War II saw a semi-disconnect from that the year before, in which we had the division system with pre-built abilities per division, but not a specific hero-based class system like Black Ops 3 or Infinite Warfare had before it. Perhaps one of the biggest innovations, though, which I had come to absolutely love, is the manual health regeneration that was shown off for the very first time as of 1 year ago today. When hearing this would be a thing a few hours earlier, I was kind of a bit baffled at the change when it was officially confirmed, thinking how in the world are they going to sacrifice a slot for, say, a tactical that makes you heal yourself? It seemed asinine at the time, but through maybe one game, it actually felt right. We only had maybe a total of 4 matches to play the entire reveal event and to capture, but believe it or not, I came home a few days later to re-immerse myself in what was at the time Call of Duty World War II content, and I found myself accidentally throwing stuns and tacticals instead of what I was intending to do and healing myself, all just from those 4 matches. That's how natural it felt in such a short period of time. Though, truth be told, the Black Ops 4 reveal stim shot that we had that expedited the healing process was a little wonky, and it's probably for the better that it was changed out. If you were to compare and take a look at it at the reveal, well, if you equip Stim Shot, you got back to 150 HP instantaneously, and it was only about a 2.5 to 3 second cooldown, so that you could use that again almost immediately. It was one of those things where you could end up actually healing twice within the same gunfight if the gunfight was long enough or some shots weren't hit. So therefore, it definitely became a crutch and of course was since changed out. Same thing goes with some of the body armor mechanics that came along with that. Another thing that was introduced that is probably lesser appreciated when it comes to innovative features added into the game for some of the fundamentals, but regardless, their first outings didn't prove to be the gold standard. Weapon balance was something else. It wasn't exactly to where it is today, where we have a relatively more stable balance of weapons after a 7-month time of the game being live, and that's simply due to the fact that, well, there wasn't enough data points of entry to catalog everything and then adjust it accordingly. Whenever you push a game out to a player base of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players around the world, you're of course going to have a lot more data to pull from and to make more accurate decisions based off of that. However, admittedly, for an early alpha, it was absolutely solid, but the clear as day winner was definitely the Rampart. Think about the Rampart now, the highest damage rifle and the highest damage full auto weapon outside of the LMGs, which naturally have a higher DPS but sacrifice a ton in mobility. It hadn't changed much except before, there was next to no recoil whatsoever. If you remember the Scar from MW2 or MW3, this was always my go-to comparison around this time last year. It felt exactly that way, but even more powerful per shot. I couldn't recommend it enough. Other weaponry offered was the likes of the ICR, the Vapor, the MX9, the Cordite, the SOG, the Auger, the Swordfish, the Titan, the Paladin, the Koshka, the Strife, the Hellion Salvo, as well as the MOG 12, which of course isn't showing their full hand with any of those weapons on offer. We still had a bunch of those added in within not only a few added in the beta, but also the full launch of the game as well. They also didn't show much customization or anything alike. If the game were to be fully complete and revealed at that point in May, well, it'd spoil any hype over the next coming 5 months at that point. One thing that I hadn't really considered at the time because I'd just seen it with keen eyes was the graphical fidelity. Though going back and seeing footage now, I can see exactly where people had complaints over the terrible graphics. And while I prefer a game that is smooth, fundamentally sound, and fun over a necessity of graphics, I totally understand the concern. Though at the time, and as you'll see now, the graphics have greatly improved compared to what we saw at the reveal. For such an event, you want to show off the fundamentals and the basic building blocks of the game, and you're not too worried about the fine details like the 4K upscaling and the hair particles of each character. Thankfully, it's come a long way in my opinion though. And having come a long way, a year exactly to be precise, countless numbers of updates, hotfixes, patches, and behind the scenes adjustments have been made. The game is undoubtedly more balanced now with a catalog of plenty more weapons. The game has a ton of customization items, albeit most of the coolest stuff is usually off limits to organic unlock due to the reserves or the shop. Maps have been completely altered in some cases, which we'll examine in a future series that we're reintroducing to the channel here as of next week. We've seen more maps added in, more specialists have been added. We have the, of course, added game modes of zombies and blackout since our debut last May, and truly countless things that we could talk about that has been a part of the progression of the game in the last 1 year. Truthfully, I look back at this with fondness, and I think that ultimately this fondness was the catalyst for revisiting the game on its 1-year anniversary of debut. I look back in that fondness because of the promise of so much potential the game had, and in some regards, still does have. It certainly took some risks that a portion of the player base wasn't too keen on, but fundamentally, at the core of the gameplay, it really wasn't half bad by any means. Now, or even back then. Somewhere along the lines of development and the natural progression of the game, this innocent build that we saw on the reveal last May 17th, a full year ago, became something more. Much more. For better or for worse, that's depending on who you ask, I suppose. But that doesn't change that the behemoth that is Black Ops 4, however you feel on the title, came from some humble origins and that spark that first set fire to the community in Hawthorne, California. Where we go from here, well, that's certainly something to consider. Hopefully an upward push, but only time will tell. So that's where we're going to wrap our 1-year retrospective look of Black Ops 4, 365 days later. In that time, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Would you go back to May 17th of last year in hopeful anticipation of Black Ops 4, or are you content with where we're at now and maybe moving on from the title? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What was your favorite part over this past year? The progression and what you saw, got to experience firsthand. Whatever it is, feel free to let me know. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, MP, Blackout, Zombies. We got you covered the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's end out the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Modest Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.